Hello guys, so today I'm going to be talking about radiographic contrast and how we use it in today's world. One contrast that we use today is high contrast and low contrast, and I'm going to be explaining today the differences and how we obtain them. So one thing we have to know about contrast is defined as difference in radiographic densities, which basically means it's the overall darkness of the image. Contrast is controlled by the kVp, but it's determined by the thickness composition of tissue, also known as tissue's coefficient absorption. Now I'm going to be talking to you about the difference between high contrast versus low contrast. So as you guys know, low contrast is obtained by using high kVp. A tool that we're going to use today to determine the effectiveness of kVp in contrast is a penetrometer. It's an aluminum step wedge with different thickness. So to determine the low contrast, I'm first going to use 80 kVp with 20 mass. So I'm going to position it here, the penetrometer. X-ray. Now we're going to use a higher kVp because it's going to have lower contrast. So I'm going to up the kVp to 120. We have 120 there, and we're going to keep the mass the same. So we're going to position it to the other side. X-ray. So as you guys can see here to the left, this is when I used the kVp at 80. As you can see the difference between the one that's 120 kVp, in the 120 kVp, which is a lower contrast, you can tell the difference between the tissues. So if you look at number 11, when I use 120 kVp and at 80 kVp, it's a big difference. You can see it more clear here than in the 80 kVp. So in order to obtain high contrast, we have to use low kVp. So as you can see here, we're going to use 50 kVp. And there's two different types of high contrast. We have short scale and we have long scale contrast. Short scale, you can see very little gray and mostly black and white. With long scale contrast, we're gonna see different shades of gray and a lot of black. And as you guys can see here, this is a long scale contrast, so you can see different shades of gray, and in the short scale contrast, you could just see black and white. So to conclude, high and low contrast determine the result of the X-ray image depending on the amount of kVp used. So in other words, to obtain high contrast, you use a low kVp, and to obtain low contrast, you use a high kVp. We also use these two types of scales, high scale contrast and low scale contrast. Low scale contrast is when we use different shades of gray. When you see different shades of gray, and high scale contrast is when it's just black, gray, and white. I hope this information helped you understand the difference between high contrast and low contrast. Thank you for your time.